Do you really think a black girl like you can even afford one pair of my shoes? Watch me. One day this same store will beg to put my name on its walls. The city lights always made Maya feel small. She was 28, living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment on the south side of Chicago. The walls were thin, the neighbors argued late at night, and the fridge often held nothing more than a carton of milk and a box of eggs. Still, she carried herself with pride. She worked 2 part-time jobs, one as a cashier in a grocery store and another cleaning offices downtown after hours. Every paycheck disappeared into bills, rent, and the quiet dream she had nursed since she was a little girl. Maya had always loved shoes. As a child, she would sit by her mother's side and draw designs in her school notebooks, imagining sneakers that looked bold, strong, and different from what everyone else wore. When other kids made fun of her hand-me-down sneakers, she promised herself that one day she would create her own line. She didn't care about fame. She wanted to prove that someone like her, a black girl from the wrong side of town, could leave a mark on the world. But dreams came with a price. The rent notice on the door reminded her how fragile her situation was. Bills stacked on the table reminded her of reality. And yet, she kept sketching her designs late into the night, her heart refusing to surrender. One Saturday morning, Maya decided to do something different. She wanted to see what it felt like to walk into the kind of store she had only ever passed by. On Michigan Avenue stood one of the most famous luxury shoe brands in America. Its giant glass windows displayed shoes like treasures in a museum. Each pair cost more than her entire monthly rent. Maya saved a small amount from her paychecks, just enough to maybe buy one discounted pair if she was lucky. More than that, she wanted to breathe the air of that world, to feel for a moment like she belonged. She took a bus downtown, wearing her cleanest jeans and a simple white blouse. Her sneakers were worn, but spotless, carefully scrubbed with an old toothbrush the night before. She walked into the glittering store with her head high. The interior sparkled. Rows of polished leather and bright sneakers stood like soldiers, each tagged with prices that made her chest tighten. Customers floated around the room, men in tailored suits, women in diamond earrings. Maya felt every eye on her, or maybe it was just her imagination. Still, she held on to her courage. She picked up a pair of sneakers from the shelf, bold red and white. Exactly the kind of design she had once drawn in her notebook. Her fingers brushed the fabric as though she was touching a dream. That was when she heard the voice. "Can I help you?" The tone wasn't warm. It was sharp, suspicious. The man speaking was tall, white, with slicked, back blonde hair and a suit that looked more expensive than her entire year's income. His name tag revealed he was not just a salesman. He was the owner. Maya smiled politely. "Yes, I was just looking at these. They're beautiful." He smirked. "They're not for everyone." Her stomach tightened, but she pretended not to notice. "I wanted to ask the price. Maybe I could try them on." The owner's eyes flicked down at her sneakers. He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Listen, sweetheart. These shoes cost more than your rent. I don't think a girl like you can afford even one pair. Let's not waste time." The words hit like stones. Customers nearby glanced over, some snickering. Maya felt heat rush to her face. She wanted to sink into the floor. But something inside her shifted. For years, people had told her she wasn't enough. Teachers who doubted her. Employers who overlooked her. Strangers who dismissed her. But this moment felt different. The humiliation stung, but behind it was a spark of fire. She placed the shoe back gently on the shelf and looked the owner in the eyes. One day, she said quietly but firmly, "This store will want my shoes. And when that day comes, you'll remember this moment." The owner chuckled again. waving her off like an annoyance. "Sure, whatever you say." Maya walked out of the store, her heart pounding. The laughter still echoed in her ears, but she refused to cry. As she stepped back onto the crowded street, she whispered to herself, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." The city lights no longer made her feel small. They looked like 1,000 challenges daring her to rise. Maya returned home that night with the insult replaying in her mind. The owner's smirk, the snickers of wealthy customers. The cruel words about her being unable to afford even one pair of shoes. Most people might have buried the shame and moved on, but Maya felt the opposite. The sting was real, but it poured fuel on her quiet fire. She sat at her small wooden desk, her sketchbook open. She pulled out the old pencils her mother had given her years ago and began drawing. Sneakers that looked bold, unique, alive. Sneakers that reflected her story. Designs filled the page one after another, as if her hand couldn't move fast enough to release what her mind saw. At dawn, she looked at the pile of sketches, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but her spirit burning. She realized she couldn't just dream anymore. She had to build. The next weeks were relentless. Maya added extra shifts at the grocery store and saved every spare dollar. She researched online about shoe design, learning about materials, stitching, and production. She watched hours of free lectures and tutorials. The world of footwear seemed huge and complicated, but she refused to be intimidated. One evening, while scrolling through an online forum, she discovered a small workshop run by a retired shoemaker named Mr. Alvarez. He was known in the neighborhood for teaching young people the basics of shoemaking. His classes weren't fancy, just hands-on practice in a dusty basement. The fee was low, but still more than Maya could afford. She stared at the price on the screen, biting her lip. It meant skipping meals, walking instead of taking the bus, saying no to small comforts. She clicked register. The first class was humbling. Maya sat with 5 other students. Most younger than her, Mr. Alvarez, a kind man with gray hair and strong hands, handed them scraps of leather and needles. "If you want to design shoes," he told them, "you must respect the craft. You must understand how every stitch holds a story." Maya listened carefully, her hands fumbling with the thick thread. Her stitches looked messy compared to the others, but she didn't quit. She stayed after class, asking questions, practicing until her fingers ached. Mr. Alvarez noticed. "You have fire in your eyes," he said once. "Fire can build or destroy. The choice is yours." Outside the class, life was harsh. Bills piled up, her landlord threatened late fees, and her body ached from overwork. Some nights, she collapsed on her bed without even eating. But she clung to the memory of the store owner's words. She whispered to herself, "I'll prove him wrong." One rainy evening, as she walked home clutching her soaked sketchbook, a thought hit her. Why wait for approval? Why not start small with what she had? She could create one pair, just one, and see where it led. That night she gathered scraps she had saved from class and began cutting. She stitched by hand, her eyes straining under the weak light bulb in her apartment. Hours turned into days. The result wasn't perfect. But when she laced up the finished sneaker and placed it on the table, she felt tears well up. It was hers. Her idea, her work, her start. Maya didn't know how far it would go. But she knew this. No one could ever again tell her she couldn't afford to dream. Maya wore her handmade sneakers the next day. They weren't flawless, but they turned heads. On the bus, a young boy asked where she bought them. At work, a coworker said, "Those are dope." "What brand is that?" Maya smiled quietly. It felt surreal to hear those words. She decided to test her designs at a local street fair. With the little money she had saved, she bought a small folding table, a cheap banner, and a few supplies. She spent nights sewing 2 more pairs by hand. Her fingers raw, but her determination unshaken. The morning of the fair, she arrived nervous but hopeful. The other vendors had polished displays and professional packaging. Maya had nothing but her sneakers. On a cloth-covered table, and a hand-drawn sign that read, Maya Originals. For the first hour, people walked past without stopping. Doubt began to creep in. Maybe she was foolish. Maybe she didn't belong here. But then a teenager in a hoodie paused. He picked up one sneaker, turning it in his hands. "These are fresh," he said. "How much?" Maya's voice trembled. $50. The boy hesitated, then nodded. "I'll take them." Her heart raced as she handed over the pair. It wasn't about the money. It was about the validation. Someone believed in her work enough to buy it. By the end of the day, she had sold 2 pairs and collected phone numbers from people who wanted to know when she'd have more. Maya walked home under the fading sun, holding $60 extra in her pocket, her spirit soaring. But the victory was short-lived. The more she tried to produce, the more she realized how limited she was. Hand-stitching each sneaker took days. Materials were costly. Orders came in faster than she could make them. Some customers grew impatient, and one even demanded a refund. One night, frustrated and close to tears, Maya called her mother. Her mom listened quietly, then said, "Baby, you were never meant to take the easy road. You've got to keep walking, even when your feet hurt. That's how you'll get there." The next morning, Maya tightened her sneakers and walked with renewed determination. She didn't have a factory or investors, but she had vision. And sometimes vision was enough to take the next step. With growing ambition, Maya decided to approach local boutiques. She carefully packed her best pair in a shoebox, dressed neatly, and visited shops one by one. At each store, she introduced herself, explained her dream, and showed her sneakers. Most store owners dismissed her politely. Some didn't even look. A few laughed outright. "We only carry established brands," one woman said. "Customers won't buy from someone nobody's heard of." The sting was sharp, but Maya pressed on. She knocked on 10 doors, then 20. Each rejection felt heavier than the last. By the time she got home, her feet were sore and her spirit bruised. She stared at her sneakers on the table, wondering if maybe the store owner downtown had been right all along. But then she remembered the boy at the street fair. His excitement, his belief. That memory pushed her forward. She began posting her designs on social media. At first, only a handful of friends liked or commented. But slowly, strangers discovered her page. One post of a bright yellow sneaker got shared dozens of times. A small wave of encouragement came her way, and she clung to it. Still, the practical challenges loomed. Without funding, she couldn't scale. Without recognition, she couldn't attract investors. Nights grew heavier with doubt, but she refused to quit. Instead, she turned each rejection into fuel. She wrote them down in her journal, reminding herself, every no is one step closer to yes. One evening after her cleaning shift, Maya noticed an older man sitting alone in the lobby of an office building. He was watching her mop the floor, his expression curious. When she finished, he approached. "Those sneakers you're wearing," he said, pointing. "Did you make them?" Maya hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, they're my own design." The man smiled. "They're impressive. I used to work in footwear manufacturing. I can tell when something has potential." His name was Robert Hale, a retired executive who had spent decades in the industry. Over coffee, he listened to her story. Unlike others, he didn't laugh. He asked questions about her process, her vision, her challenges. When she finished, he leaned back and said, You remind me of myself when I was starting out, hungry, unshaken by doubt. I'd like to help you, if you're serious." Maya's eyes widened. "Help me how?" "I can connect you to small-scale manufacturers. Not the big guys, but people who can produce limited runs of your designs. It won't be easy and it won't be cheap. But if you're ready to fight for this, I'll guide you." Hope surged through her veins. For the first time, someone with experience believed in her. The following weeks became a whirlwind. Robert introduced her to a workshop that could produce small batches. Maya scraped together every dollar, sacrificing meals and comforts to pay for the first run. Holding the finished boxes of sneakers felt unreal. She launched them online with simple photos taken in her apartment. Within a week, half the stock sold out. Customers posted pictures, tagging her brand. Word began to spread. Maya knew this was just the beginning. She was no longer just a girl with a dream. She was becoming a name. Maya's first online launch had sold faster than she ever imagined. Each time her phone buzzed with an order notification, she felt like the world was whispering, "Keep going." Customers were posting selfies in her sneakers with captions like, "New favorite brand and this girl is going places." For the first time, she began to believe she might actually build something real. But with new growth came new challenges. Orders were piling in faster than her manufacturer could handle. Some deliveries were late, some pairs had flaws. Customers complained, and Maya felt the sting of their disappointment. One night she sat staring at angry emails, feeling that same old voice creep back. Maybe you're not good enough. Instead of crumbling, she chose action. She called Robert, her mentor, in a shaky voice. "I'm scared I'm going to lose everything before I even begin." Robert chuckled gently. "Maya, do you know how many times Nike, Adidas, and Reebok messed up their first runs? Mistakes don't define you. How you fix them does. Take responsibility, make it right, and keep pushing." So she did. She offered refunds without hesitation. She sent handwritten apology notes. She worked with the workshop to fix errors and improve quality control. Slowly, trust began to rebuild. Her transparency impressed people. Customers began posting not just about her shoes, but about her integrity. Then came the email that changed everything. A small online magazine dedicated to highlighting young entrepreneurs had discovered her brand. They wanted to do a feature titled, "The Girl Redesigning the Sneaker Game." The article included photos of Maya, her story, and her journey from sketches in a tiny apartment to launching her own line. Within days, her follower count tripled. Orders flooded in. And then came the call she never expected. A local television station wanted her on their morning show. When she sat in the bright studio lights, nerves shaking through her hands, the host smiled and said, "Maya, your story has inspired so many. What message do you want to share with young dreamers out there?" Maya looked straight into the camera and said, "No matter where you start, no matter how many people doubt you, you have the power to create something that changes your world. All it takes is belief and the courage to act on it." Her words echoed far beyond the studio. One chilly afternoon, Maya walked past Michigan Avenue again. The same luxury shoe store towered in front of her, gleaming under the city lights. She hadn't stepped inside since that humiliating day months ago. But now, things were different. She wore a pair of her own sneakers, sleek, black and gold, with her logo embroidered on the side. Strangers on the street had already stopped her to ask where she got them. With steady breaths, she pushed the door open and walked inside. The store looked exactly the same. Rows of polished shoes, well-dressed customers, and there behind the counter, the owner. The same man with the slick blonde hair. He didn't recognize her at first. He greeted her with a forced smile. Then his eyes narrowed. Recognition flickered across his face. Well, if it isn't the girl who wanted shoes she couldn't afford. He said with a laugh. Back again. Looking to window shop? Maya didn't flinch. She walked to the nearest display and picked up a sneaker. Actually, I came to ask if you'd consider carrying my brand. The owner burst out laughing, loud enough for customers to turn and stare. Your brand. Don't waste my time. We only deal with established names. You really think people would buy your shoes? At that moment, a young woman nearby stepped forward. She pointed to Maya's sneakers. Excuse me? Are those the Maya originals I saw online? I've been trying to get a pair, but they keep selling out. More heads turned. Another customer pulled out his phone. Wait, are you the Maya they wrote about in the magazine? The store buzzed with whispers. Customers recognized her. Some even took photos. The owner's smirk faded. For the first time, he looked unsettled. Maya met his eyes. You asked me once if I could afford a single pair. Now people can't stop asking where to buy mine. Remember this moment. Because soon, stores like yours will be asking me for permission to carry them. She placed the sneaker back on the shelf and walked out, leaving the owner speechless in front of his wealthy customers. Success was growing, but it came with a new set of storms. As her brand expanded, copycats appeared online. Larger companies tried to imitate her designs, selling cheaper versions at lower prices. Negative bloggers wrote articles claiming her rise was just a trend. Investors began reaching out. But some tried to trick her into signing unfair deals that would strip her of control. Maya felt overwhelmed. She was still the same girl in a small apartment, juggling bills. Yet now she had hundreds of customers depending on her. Some nights she cried into her pillow, afraid she was in too deep. Robert reminded her, every empire faces storms. The question is not whether you can avoid them, but whether you can steer through them. So she tightened her grip. She filed for trademarks to protect her brand. She partnered with ethical manufacturers who respected her vision. She built a small but loyal team of friends who believed in her dream. With their help, she launched her first official collection, 10 designs inspired by her life. She named them after the struggles she had faced. The South Side for her neighborhood. The Resilient for the nights she stitched through tears. The Limitless for the voice that told her she wasn't enough. Each shoe carried a piece of her story. The collection sold out within days. Sneaker blogs hailed her as the new face of independent footwear. Social media buzzed. Young kids from neighborhoods like hers posted videos saying, "If she can do it, maybe I can too." Maya realized this wasn't just about shoes anymore. It was about hope. Months later, Maya received an invitation to a major fashion expo in New York. It was the kind of event where the biggest brands showcased their newest lines. Her slot was small, tucked away in a corner, but she didn't care. She poured her heart into preparing. When the day arrived, she set up her booth with her sneakers lined neatly on white shelves. Her banner read simply, Maya Originals. At first, people walked by without much interest, but then a few stopped. They tried on her sneakers, asked about her story, and shared her name on social media. Slowly, a crowd began to gather. By afternoon, a well-known celebrity athlete stopped by. He tried on a pair of Resilients and grinned. "These feel different. I like them." Cameras flashed. Journalists rushed over. In minutes, Maya's small booth became the center of attention. Within weeks, orders poured in from across the country. A major retailer reached out, offering to place her collection in select stores. Magazines hailed her as a bold new voice in fashion. Maya stood in her apartment, staring at the signed contract. Tears filled her eyes. She remembered the night she had walked out of that luxury store, humiliated. Now her sneakers were about to be sold nationwide. The grand opening of Maya's first official flagship store took place a year later. The line stretched around the block. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. The sign above the door glowed brightly. Maya Originals. Inside, shelves sparkled with her designs. Customers from all walks of life filled the space, buying, laughing, celebrating. Her mother stood proudly by her side, tears streaming down her face. Robert, her mentor, smiled like a proud father. And then, as if fate demanded closure, the luxury store owner appeared. His face was pale, his eyes sharp with envy. He approached Maya slowly, his voice quieter than before. "Your store is impressive," he muttered. "Maybe we should talk about carrying your shoes in my chain." Maya looked at him calmly, remembering every word of his insult. "I appreciate the offer," she said, "but I think we'll do just fine on our own." The crowd around her erupted in applause. The owner slipped away, defeated, as cameras captured the moment. Maya looked out at the sea of faces wearing her sneakers. Children, teenagers, adults, all walking with pride in something she had created. She realized the store wasn't just hers. It belonged to everyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. Her journey had come full circle. The insult that once broke her had become the fire that built her empire. Moral lesson is that never let someone else's doubt define your destiny. What they call impossible can become the very reason you rise. Your turn. What's the life lesson you're walking away with? Tell us in the comments. Like and subscribe the channel for more interesting videos.